You are 1 in 10 billion, selected from across the galaxy not for your loyalty or your courage or your faith, but for genetic perfection so rare that entire worlds might produce a single candidate in a generation. You were taken from your family before you could remember their faces, brought to Terra, to the Imperial Palace, to halls where the Emperor himself once walked. You were 3 years old when they began the transformation that would make you more than human, less than Primarch, and absolutely without equal among mortal warriors. Welcome to the Adeptus Custodes. Welcome to the Emperor's 10,000. Welcome to a life of perfection, isolation, and the crushing weight of being humanity's ultimate guardian. This is not the story of the Imperial Guard, who die in millions. This is not the tale of Space Marines, who know brotherhood and chapter bonds. This is the reality of being a Custodian Guard, one of 10,000 warriors who stand between humanity and annihilation, who have protected the Emperor for 10,000 years, who are individually worth armies and collectively irreplaceable. You are the pinnacle of human augmentation, the final expression of the Emperor's genetic mastery, a warrior so perfect that your existence makes even Space Marines look like crude prototypes. And you are utterly, completely, devastatingly alone. Your name was erased the day you entered the palace. Not because names don't matter to custodians, but because the person you were ceased to exist the moment the transformation began. The child, taken from some distant world, selected for genetic markers that appear once in a billion births, marked for greatness beyond comprehension and sacrifice beyond measure. That child died in the pain engines and gene forges and psycho-indoctrination chambers. What emerged was you, a Custodian Guard, bearing a new name given by ancient tradition, carrying designations that trace lineage back 10 millennia, inheriting the legacy of warriors who stood beside the Emperor during the Unification Wars. The process that made you is not the mass production of Space Marine creation. There are no batches, no classes graduating together, no sense of brotherhood forged through shared suffering. Each custodian is a unique work of art, gene-crafted individually by masters who have spent centuries perfecting their science. Your transformation took decades, not the months required to make Astartes. Every cell in your body was rewritten at the molecular level, your entire genetic structure rebuilt from the ground up using secrets the Emperor himself devised, and techniques that died with him 10,000 years ago. You are not mass-produced, you are handcrafted, each of you a masterwork that can never be truly replicated because the knowledge to create you is slowly fading with each passing century. You emerged from the transformation at age 30, though your physical appearance suggests prime of life and will continue suggesting that for centuries. Your body is a weapon refined beyond anything the Imperium can manufacture with its current technology. You stand perhaps 8 feet tall in your Oromite armor, your muscles dense with reinforced fibers that make even Astartes look weak by comparison. Your reflexes operate on timescales measured in microseconds, your mind processes information faster than most cogitators, your senses detect details invisible to unaugmented humans. You can fight for days without rest, survive wounds that would kill Space Marines, process toxins and radiation that would liquefy mortal flesh. You are, by any meaningful measure, as close to a living god as humanity can create without the Emperor's direct involvement. But perfection comes with a price that has nothing to do with the physical pain of transformation and everything to do with what you lost in becoming this. You have no family. The memories deliberately suppressed during psycho-conditioning because attachment to anything outside the Imperium is weakness. You have no brothers, not in the way Astartes have battle brothers, because each custodian is forged individually and trained to operate alone, a self-contained army rather than a component of a larger force. You have no future beyond service, because retirement does not exist for custodians, rest is found only in death, and that death will likely come after centuries of watching everything and everyone you might have cared about crumble to dust. The Imperial Palace is your home, your prison, your sacred duty, and your entire universe. You stand guard in halls so vast that cities could fit inside them, watching doorways that haven't opened in millennia, protecting relics whose purpose has been forgotten by all save the oldest among your order. The palace is a labyrinth of such impossible scale that you could walk for years without seeing the same corridor twice, a structure built over thousands of years by billions of hands, now maintained by servitors and honored by your presence. You guard the Eternity Gate, the Sanctum Imperialis, the approaches to the Golden Throne where the Emperor sits in eternal vigil, his consciousness fighting a war in the warp, while his body slowly dies despite the 1,000 psychers sacrificed daily to sustain it. You know what others do not, what the Imperium cannot acknowledge without collapsing into despair. The Emperor is dying, has been dying for 10,000 years, will continue dying for however long the Golden Throne can sustain him. You stand guard over a corpse, protecting a body that houses a mind still fighting humanity's wars in dimensions beyond mortal comprehension. The throne itself is failing, its mechanisms decaying despite the Mechanicus's best efforts, its systems jerry-rigged with technology they no longer fully understand and cannot properly repair. You guard the slow death of the greatest being humanity has ever known, and you do so with absolute dedication because his death would mean the death of everything, the collapse of the Astronomicon, the loss of warp travel, the fragmentation of the Imperium into a million isolated worlds slowly consumed by the darkness. Your first posting was to the Hall of Victories, a corridor 3 kilometers long lined with banners from the Great Crusade, trophies from battles fought when the Emperor still walked among men, memorials to victories that seem almost mythological now. You stood there for 5 years. Not 5 years interrupted by shifts and rotations, but 5 years of continuous guard duty, your enhanced physiology allowing you to remain alert and functional without sleep. Your mind disciplined enough to maintain perfect vigilance, even as centuries of training echo through your consciousness. 5 years watching the same stretch of corridor, ensuring no threat approached relics that no one came to see, protecting history from enemies that never materialized. Other warriors would have gone mad from the time. Monotony. Space Marines would have needed rotation, their enhanced biology notwithstanding, because even Astartes' minds have limits. But you are Custodian, and you were made for this. Your consciousness operates on multiple levels simultaneously, your mind capable of maintaining absolute awareness of your surroundings while also contemplating philosophy, rehearsing combat techniques, composing poetry in High Gothic, analyzing tactical scenarios, or simply existing in a state of meditative perfection. You did not experience 5 years of tedium. You experienced 5 years of duty performed with the excellence that defines your existence. When the order came to leave your post, you felt nothing. Not relief, not disappointment, not anything except immediate readiness to fulfill the next assignment. Emotions exist in you, are not suppressed the way fear is in Astartes, or programmed out the way humanity is in Kriegsman. But your emotional responses are sublimated beneath layers of discipline so profound that feeling becomes choice rather than reaction. You can access emotion when tactically relevant, but allowing it to affect your duty is unthinkable, a failure that no custodian would permit in themselves. Your new assignment: personal guard to a High Lord of Terror, one of the 12 individuals who govern the Imperium in the Emperor's name. This is simultaneously great honor and subtle punishment, a recognition of your capabilities while also removing you from the palace proper, sending you into the wider world where politics and ambition and human weakness play out their eternal dramas. You understand immediately that this posting is a test, that your actions will be observed, that how you handle the complexities of serving political masters while maintaining absolute loyalty to the Emperor will determine your future assignments. The High Lord you're assigned to protect is Fabian Guelfrain, Master of the Administratum, a man who commands bureaucratic machinery that processes 1 million worlds worth of documentation daily. He is, by the standards of his position, relatively honest, relatively competent, and absolutely terrified of you. You can see it in his elevated heart rate, the microscopic tension in his facial muscles, the way his eyes never quite meet yours when he addresses you. To him, you are myth made flesh, legend given form, the Emperor's own angels walking in the world of mortal politics. He treats you with elaborate courtesy, while fundamentally misunderstanding what you are and why you exist. You accompany him through his daily routine, standing at attention during endless councils where petty men argue about resources and jurisdictions and matters of such trivial scope that your presence feels almost insulting. You watch him navigate political maneuvering with skill you recognize as sophisticated by mortal standards and pathetic by any meaningful measure. You hear him make decisions that will affect billions of lives, choices made with limited information and even more limited wisdom, the best humanity can manage in the Emperor's absence. And you say nothing, because your role is not to govern but to protect, not to advise unless asked but to ensure his survival, so the machinery of the Imperium continues functioning. During a council session in the Senatorium Imperialis, you detect it. A disturbance so subtle that even your enhanced senses almost miss it, a vibration in the air that's not quite sound, a pattern in the room's atmospheric pressure that suggests something wrong with physics. Your hand moves to your guardian spear before your conscious mind has finished processing the threat, your body reacting with speed that makes you seem to simply appear in a defensive position, your auramite armor's systems coming online with thought speed activation. The assassination attempt unfolds in the space of 3 seconds, which from your perspective is enough time to identify the threat, calculate 17 response options, select optimal solution, and execute with prejudice. A sanctioned psyker among the High Lord's retinue, corrupted by something in the warp, attempting to manifest demonic presence using their own body as gateway. You see the moment of possession, the way their eyes change color and their flesh begins to warp, the reality around them distorting as something from beyond tries to force its way into materium. You move, not with the stolid determination of Imperial Guard or the explosive speed of Astartes, but with fluid perfection that looks almost gentle until you understand the forces involved. Your guardian's spear, a weapon that has tasted the blood of primarchs and greater daemons, that contains technologies from the dark age of technology, wrapped in mysteries the Mechanicus would kill to understand, activates with your intent. The bolter, integrated into the weapon, fires once, a single mass-reactive round that crosses the distance and detonates inside the psyker's skull before they can complete whatever working they were attempting. The threat assessment continues even as their body falls. You've calculated that partial manifestation may have occurred, that daemonic essence could linger, that the corruption could spread to others in proximity. Your spear's blade, wreathed now in energy fields that burn at molecular levels, moves through the corpse with surgical precision, ensuring complete destruction of flesh that might harbor warp taint. The entire sequence from detection to elimination takes 3 seconds. The other people in the chamber are still processing that something happened when you've already confirmed the threat is neutralized and resumed your guard position. The aftermath is chaos, mortal minds trying to comprehend events that happened too quickly for unaugmented perception to follow. Guards flood the chamber, their weapons drawn and completely useless, because if you hadn't stopped the threat, they would all be dead before realizing they were in danger. Inquisitorial representatives arrive within the hour, demanding explanations and conducting their investigations with the self-importance of people who think they understand dangers you've been fighting since before their civilization existed. You provide concise after-action report, answer their questions with precision that borders on condescension, and return to your post because duty does not pause for politics. High Lord Guelfrane approaches you later, in the privacy of his chambers, his hands shaking slightly despite his attempts at composure. "You saved my life," he says, and the statement contains gratitude, fear, and the recognition that his life was never truly in his own hands, that he exists only because you permitted it. "I performed my function, Lord," you reply, your voice modulated to neutral courtesy. "The threat was detected and eliminated. That is what I am for." He wants more, wants some acknowledgement of heroism or reassurance of protection, wants to establish connection with you as if you were human in the way he understands humanity. But you cannot give him that because you are not human, not anymore, not in any way that would comfort him. You are custodian, and your relationship to him is the same as a weapon's relationship to its wielder. Functional, effective, absolute, nothing more. The decades pass, and you remain unchanged. Your body does not age in any meaningful way, your appearance fixed in what appears to be prime physical condition but will remain so for centuries. High Lord Guelfran ages before your eyes, his hair graying, his face weathering, his movements slowing in ways that mortal flesh cannot avoid. You watch 3 generations of his family grow, serve, and die, their lifespans flickering past like brief candles while you remain constant, eternal, watching. You are the unchanging guardian in a universe of entropy, the fixed point around which mortal life revolves and returns to dust. You've lost count of how many threats you've neutralized. Not because the number is beyond your capability to track, but because counting implies they matter individually, when what matters is the continuous perfect execution of duty. Assassination attempts blend together, 17 different methods from 16 different factions. All failures because anything approaching your charge must first get past you, and nothing gets past Custodian Guard. You've killed with your spear, with your misericordia blade, with your bare hands when circumstances required it. You fought cultists and assassins and rogue psychers, and once, memorably, a genestealer hybrid that had infiltrated the administratum and made it within 5 meters of the High Lord before you detected the biological anomalies that marked it as Xenos. Each kill is perfect, efficient, executed with the minimum necessary force to ensure threat elimination while avoiding collateral damage. You do not hate your enemies, feel no satisfaction in their deaths, experience no emotional response to violence beyond clinical assessment of tactical effectiveness. This is what makes you different from Space Marines, who feel righteous fury in battle, or Imperial Guard, who kill with the desperate energy of survival. You kill the way master craftsmen practice their art, with focused attention and complete commitment to excellence, because killing is your purpose, and you were made to embody perfection. But perfection is lonely. You serve alongside the High Lord's other guards, mortal soldiers who rotate through shifts, who eat and sleep and joke with each other during quiet moments. They are afraid of you, respectfully terrified, treating you with elaborate deference while avoiding genuine interaction, because you make them uncomfortable in ways they can't quite articulate. You are too perfect, too inhuman, too much like a statue come to life. You overhear them talking when they think you can't hear, discussing. You like you're more weapon than person. And they're not wrong, but hearing it confirms the isolation that defines your existence. There are other custodians in service across Terra, scattered among various duties and postings, and occasionally you encounter them during official functions or joint operations. These moments should feel like reunion, finding your own kind, but they don't, because custodians don't bond the way others do. You acknowledge each other with perfect courtesy, exchange tactical information with crystalline precision, and then separate because your duties are individual and your connections are to the Emperor, not to each other. You have more in common with them than with any other beings in the galaxy, and yet you feel no closer to them than to the mortal guards you serve alongside. The isolation becomes most apparent during the festival of the Emperor's Ascension, when Terra's nobility gather to celebrate the day 10,000 years ago when the Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne. It's a bitter celebration, mourning disguised as festivity, the entire planet pretending that what happened was glorious rather than catastrophic. You stand guard at the feast, watching mortals eat and drink and laugh with forced gaiety, seeing them try to forget for one night that their civilization is slowly dying, that the Emperor they claim to worship is a corpse on a throne, that every day the Imperium endures is a minor miracle of bureaucratic inertia rather than any coherent plan. A young noble approaches you during the feast, emboldened by drink and curiosity. She's beautiful by human standards, adorned with wealth that could feed a hive city, wearing genetic enhancements that mark her as high nobility. "Is it true you're 10,000 years old?" she asks, and the question reveals her complete misunderstanding of what you are. "I have served for 147 years, you reply, your voice carrying no inflection. The truth, which you don't share, is that time feels different to you. Subjectively, you've experienced more than mortal lifespans, because your enhanced cognition allows you to process reality at speeds they cannot comprehend. Those 147 years contain more conscious experience than multiple mortal lives, every moment recorded with perfect clarity in memory that does not fade or distort. Do you ever?" She pauses, searching for words, her intoxication making her bolder than wisdom would suggest. "Do you ever wish you were just human, normal, able to love and have family and live a life that's yours?" The question is more profound than she realizes, cuts closer to truths that custodians contemplate in their centuries of guard duty. You look at her, this creature of brief life and fleeting concerns, and consider how to answer in ways her limited experience can comprehend. "I am what the Emperor made me to be," you say finally. "Wishes are irrelevant to function. I exist to serve. That is enough." She looks at you with something like pity, which would be insulting if she had any conception of what you are and what she is by comparison. She drifts away, back to her celebration, back to her temporary pleasures and meaningless social maneuvering. You remain at your post, watching everything, feeling nothing, being exactly what you were made to be. But her question echoes in your mind during the quiet hours, bouncing around your consciousness with the persistence of ideas that challenge foundational assumptions. Do you wish you were human? The question presupposes that you're not human, which is technically incorrect by biological classification and philosophically complex by any other measure. You retain human DNA, think in human patterns, experience human emotions when you choose to access them. But you're as far beyond baseline humanity as they are beyond insects. Your cognitive capacity and physical capabilities creating gulf of experience that makes true connection impossible. You remember fragments of your childhood before the transformation, memories deliberately preserved as part of your identity despite the psycho-conditioning. You remember a woman's face, probably your mother, though the emotional connection to that relationship has been severed. You remember playing in dirt under alien sun, the specific world lost to deliberate memory editing. You remember being afraid, being happy, being small and weak and utterly insignificant. That child is dead, killed by the transformation that made you custodian, and you cannot mourn him because mourning would suggest you value what he was over what you became, which would be failure. The truth is more complicated than you can ever explain to mortals who ask these questions. You are simultaneously grateful for what you've become and aware of what it cost, proud of your purpose and cognizant of its isolation, fulfilled by duty and conscious of eternity stretching ahead. You are living paradox, human enough to understand what you've lost, and posthuman enough not to feel the loss the way mortals would. You exist in a space between neither one thing nor another, perfect in function and incomplete in being. Your enhanced lifespan means you've watched the Imperium change in ways most citizens never perceive. High Lords die and are replaced, their policies shifting like tides, each one convinced they're steering humanity toward salvation, while mostly just maintaining the status quo. The administratum grows more Byzantine with each passing decade, adding layers of bureaucracy that make governance less efficient but provide employment for billions who have no other skills. The Mechanicus hoards technology it no longer understands, treating machines like sacred relics because they've forgotten the science that created them. The ecclesiarchy preaches faith in an emperor who never wanted worship, building cathedrals to a man who explicitly rejected divinity. You've seen all of this from your position, standing guard over people who make decisions affecting quadrillions while barely comprehending the consequences. You've watched good men try to reform systems too entrenched to change, idealists broken by the sheer momentum of institutional inertia. You've seen corrupt officials elevated through politics, while competent administrators languish in obscurity. You've seen the Imperium make the same mistakes over and over, grinding forward not through wisdom but through sheer mass, surviving despite itself rather than because of its governance. And through it all, you remain silent. Your role is not to govern, not to advise unless specifically asked, not to interfere with the political machinery even when you can see it making catastrophic mistakes. You are guardian, not guide, protector, not ruler. The Emperor created you to be warriors beyond compare, not administrators or politicians or leaders. The Custodian Guard that tried to guide the Imperium, after the heresy learned that lesson, failed in their attempt to rule, and retreated to their proper role as defenders of the palace and the Emperor's will. The isolation compounds with each passing decade. You watch mortals live their brief lives, forming connections and relationships that will end in death within a century at most, finding meaning in their temporary existences. You watch space marines bond with their battle brothers, finding brotherhood in shared combat and chapter tradition, living for centuries but still mortal enough to understand ending. You alone exist in timescales that divorce you from everyone except your fellow custodians, and even with them you maintain professional distance because that's what you were trained for. There are moments, brief and quickly suppressed, where you feel something approaching loneliness. Watching a family embrace in the palace corridors, their affection obvious and completely foreign to your experience. Hearing soldiers joke together, their camaraderie built on shared hardship and mutual trust that you cannot replicate. Seeing lovers hold each other with desperate tenderness, knowing you will never experience that vulnerability because vulnerability is weakness, and weakness is failure, and failure is unacceptable for Custodian Guard. You push the feelings down, sublimate them beneath duty, refocus on your purpose because purpose is all you have and all you need. You are guardian of humanity, protector of the Emperor's vision, living bulwark against the darkness that seeks to consume everything. Your isolation is the price of perfection. Your loneliness, the cost of being useful in ways that require transcending human limitation. You tell yourself this is acceptable, that it's enough, that meaning found in function is superior to meaning found in connection. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of your centuries of guard duty, you wonder if the Emperor intended this. If he looked at you, his finest warriors, and saw tools to be used or children to be cherished. If he understood that making you this perfect would make you this alone, or if he simply didn't care because he was beyond such concerns himself. Operating on scales, where individual experience meant nothing compared to cosmic necessity, you'll never know the answer. The Emperor sits on his throne, his consciousness fighting wars you cannot perceive, his body maintained by machinery he can no longer explain and psychic sacrifice he cannot prevent. He cannot tell you if your isolation matters, if your loneliness serves some greater purpose, if your perfection justifies its cost. You can only continue serving, continue protecting, continue being exactly what he made you to be, hoping that somewhere in the infinite calculation of his divine intellect, your existence means something beyond just function. 3 centuries pass. High Lord Guelphrane died 80 years ago, peacefully in his sleep, which you ensured by detecting the cardiac event moments before it became catastrophic, and choosing not to intervene because his time had come, and prolonging it would serve no purpose. You've served 7 High Lords since then, each one dying or retiring or being removed through politics. Brief candles in your eternal vigil. You remember all their names, all their faces, catalogue their strengths and weaknesses with perfect recall, but they blur together into a continuum of mortal leadership, different faces attached to the same fundamental human limitations. Your posting has changed over the centuries, rotating through various assignments within the palace and occasionally outside it. You've stood guard over the Eternity Gate during periods of heightened threat, your presence alone enough to deter attacks that might have otherwise been attempted. You've accompanied inquisitorial delegations into the Eye of Terror's edge regions, your guardian spear ending demonic manifestations with prejudice while mortal servants of the throne gathered intelligence at terrible cost. You've trained new custodians, those rare few who survived the transformation and now needed to learn from veterans what it means to serve with absolute excellence. Training others is strange. You watch young custodians, barely a century old, struggling with the same realizations you once struggled with, learning to manage the isolation and the perfection and the crushing weight of being irreplaceable. You share what you've learned, teaching combat techniques refined over 300 years of actual application, demonstrating tactical analysis that only experience can provide, showing them how to maintain perfect vigilance during centuries of guard duty without losing the edge that keeps you effective. But you cannot teach them how to be human, because you're not certain you remember how anymore. You cannot prepare them for watching everyone they might care about die while they remain unchanged. You cannot explain how it feels to stand guard over the same door for decades, knowing that door hasn't opened in millennia and likely won't open in your lifetime, maintaining readiness for a threat that may never materialize because that's what duty requires. These lessons they must learn themselves, each custodian facing their eternity alone, finding their own accommodation with what they've become. The galaxy is changing in ways that trouble even your enhanced intellect. The Great Rift tore reality open, splitting the Imperium in half, making travel and communication nearly impossible across vast regions. Chaos is ascendant, demonic incursions happening with frequency that suggests reality's barriers are weakening. Xenos empires are expanding, sensing imperial weakness like predators smelling blood. The Mechanicus discovered Primarch Robute Guilliman in stasis and successfully revived him, the first Primarch to walk among mortals in 10,000 years. And his return has changed everything about the palace's atmosphere. You were present when Guilliman knelt before the Golden Throne, when he spoke to his father for the first time since the heresy. You stood guard during that audience, one of 4 custodians maintaining vigilance while a demigod confronted godhood. You watched his face when he emerged, saw emotions there that you couldn't fully interpret but recognized as profound devastation, disappointment, grief. Whatever the Emperor communicated to his son, it was not comfort or reassurance or the paternal warmth a child might hope for from a father after 10,000 years of separation. Guilliman looked at you after that audience, really looked at you, his Primarch's perception seeing through your armor and augmentation to whatever remains of humanity beneath. "You're still here," he said, and the statement carried weight you didn't immediately understand. 10,000 years, standing guard, never wavering. Do you even remember what you're guarding anymore? The question was philosophical, possibly rhetorical, but you answered because Primarchs deserve response, even when custodians would remain silent for others. I guard the Emperor, Lord Guilliman. I guard his palace, his works, his vision for humanity. That purpose has not changed in 10,000 years. His vision, Guilliman repeated, something bitter in his voice. Do you know what he told me? Do you know what the master of mankind, the Emperor of the Imperium, the God Emperor as they call him now, do you know what he communicated to his loyal son after 10 millennia? You remained silent, because this was clearly not question but prelude to revelation that Primarch needed to speak aloud. He called me a tool. Useful, to be preserved and utilized, but ultimately just a mechanism for accomplishing his goals. No welcome, no warmth, no acknowledgement of sacrifice or service, or the Imperium I built in his name. Just tactical assessment of my utility and instructions for deployment. Guilliman's eyes met yours, and you saw in them the same realization that you'd reached centuries ago. We're all just tools to him. Me, you, everyone who serves. We're means to ends that he's pursuing across timescales we can't comprehend, in dimensions we can't perceive, for purposes he's never adequately explained. The Primarch's words echoed thoughts you'd carefully never allowed yourself to fully form. Questions about the Emperor's nature and purpose, that custodians are not supposed to contemplate because contemplation leads to doubt and doubt is failure. But hearing them from demigod who stood beside the Emperor during the Crusade, who helped build the Imperium that you now guard, gave them weight that your own private questionings lacked. Does that trouble you, Lord? You asked, genuine curiosity overcoming your usual reticence. Guilliman considered the question, his enhanced intellect processing layers of complexity that you could follow but not fully share. It should, he said finally. It should trouble all of us. But it doesn't change anything, does it? Whether he loves us or merely uses us, whether we're children or tools, whether his vision is divine inspiration or supreme calculation, we still serve. Because the alternative is allowing everything to fall into darkness, and that's not acceptable regardless of how we feel about the master we're serving. He left after that, returning to his duties as Lord Commander of the Imperium, attempting to reform systems that had calcified over 10,000 years, trying to save a civilization that seems determined to die from its own dysfunction. You return to your post, standing guard in corridors that have remained unchanged since you first walked them 3 centuries ago, contemplating Primarch's words and their implications for your existence. The truth that Guilliman spoke aloud is one that you've circled around for centuries without quite facing directly. The Emperor may not love you, may not love any of his creations, not in the way that humans understand love, not with the emotional connection that mortals crave from parents or gods or leaders. He may simply be so far beyond human experience that concepts like love and compassion and individual value are irrelevant to his calculations, that he operates on scales where individuals are just variables in equations of cosmic significance, and yet you serve. Not because you're programmed to serve, though your conditioning certainly reinforces obedience, but because you've chosen to serve. You made decision that your purpose is meaningful even if the being you serve may not value you the way you'd wish to be valued. You guard the Emperor not because he loves you but because he is worth guarding, because his vision for humanity, however flawed its execution, is still better than any alternative, because letting him die would mean doom for countless billions who have no choice in their fate. This is the secret wisdom that comes with centuries of service. Duty doesn't require love. Purpose doesn't demand affection. You can serve something greater than yourself without needing that something to acknowledge your sacrifice or reward your dedication. The meaning comes from the service itself, from the excellence with which you execute your function, from the knowledge that your existence prevents horrors that others will never know they were spared from. You are Custodian Guard. You are the Emperor's final gift to humanity. Warriors so perfect that nothing mortal can match you. Guardians so dedicated that 10,000 years have not diminished your vigilance. You are also, fundamentally, alone in ways that no other beings in the galaxy experience, isolated by your perfection from genuine connection, divorced by your longevity from temporal concerns that motivate mortals. You exist in the spaces between neither fully human nor transcendent, neither god nor machine, just warrior maintaining eternal vigil for purposes that may be divine or may simply be cosmic scale calculation. The palace corridors stretch away in every direction, kilometers of marble and gold and ancient stone that have witnessed the entirety of the Imperium's history. You stand in those corridors, a statue come to life, a guardian who has stood here for 300 years and will stand here for 300 more if duty requires. Around you, the Imperium grinds forward, billions dying daily in wars they don't understand, trillions living lives of desperate survival, quadrillions existing in the vast machinery of bureaucracy and faith that keeps civilization from collapsing into total anarchy. You guard them all, not individually, but collectively. Your existence, along with your 9,999 fellow custodians, forms bulwark against threats that would end everything. You stand between humanity and the darkness, between the Emperor and those who would destroy him, between order and chaos in its most literal and metaphysical forms. This is your purpose. This is your meaning. This is what justifies your existence and your isolation and your eternal vigil. And if sometimes, in the quiet moments between duties, you feel the weight of centuries and the ache of isolation and the question of whether your perfection is worth its price, you push those feelings down and return to your post and continue standing guard. Because that's what custodians do. That's what you were made for. That's all you'll ever be. And it has to be enough, because nothing else is offered and nothing else would serve. You are standing in the Sanctum Imperialis, as close to the Golden Throne as any but the highest-ranked custodians are permitted to approach. The chamber is vast beyond mortal comprehension, its ceiling lost in shadows that might be darkness or might be the warp itself bleeding through reality's barriers. The throne dominates the space, a structure of gold and adamantium and technologies that the Mechanicus can maintain but no longer understands, wrapped in psychic fields so powerful they make even your enhanced senses ache with their intensity. The Emperor sits upon his throne. Sits is perhaps the wrong word. He is trapped there, imprisoned by necessity, his body sustained by machinery and sacrifice, while his mind wages wars across dimensions that you cannot perceive. You can see him, though mortals cannot without losing their sanity to the overwhelming presence. You see the withered form beneath the glory, the corpse-like reality beneath the psychic projection of godhood. You see what 10,000 years of this existence has cost him, the slow degradation of flesh that was once the pinnacle of human potential, now reduced to barely living tissue kept functional through methods that border on torture. He is aware of you. You know this with certainty, beyond evidence. Feel his attention touch your consciousness like the brush of starlight, vast and cold and utterly impersonal. He knows, every custodian individually, remembers each of you from your creation even if he no longer has the capacity to express that knowledge. You are his creation, his guardians, his final defense against the powers that would destroy everything he built. And you stand vigil, as you've stood vigil for centuries, as you'll stand vigil for centuries more, until either he rises or the universe ends. This is the truth that defines your existence. You are guardian to a dying god, protector of a vision that may already have failed, defender of an imperium that the emperor himself might not recognize or approve of. The civilization you protect has become everything he fought against during unification: superstitious, theocratic, oppressive, stagnant. The imperial truth he championed has been replaced by the imperial creed that worships him as divine. The secular reason he tried to build has been consumed by faith in a being who explicitly rejected worship. The Imperium of man has become the Imperium of the God Emperor, and the Emperor is in no position to correct the trajectory. And yet you serve. Because the alternative is unthinkable. Because if the Emperor dies, if the Golden Throne fails, if the Astronomicon goes dark, then humanity is doomed to slow extinction across a million isolated worlds. Because even a flawed vision of order is preferable to the certain chaos that would follow his death. Because you were made for this, and purpose cannot be abandoned simply because it's difficult or the being you serve cannot acknowledge your sacrifice. You think about the Primarch's words, his assessment that you're all just tools to be used. You think about the 300 years you've served, the centuries still ahead, the isolation and perfection and crushing weight of duty. You think about the mortal lives you've watched flicker and fade, the connections you cannot form, the humanity you've sacrificed to become posthuman guardian. You think about whether any of it matters. Whether your existence serves some divine purpose, or if you're just weapon that happens to be self-aware, mechanism that thinks it has meaning but is ultimately just functioning as designed. And you reach a conclusion that brings something almost like peace. It doesn't matter. Whether the Emperor loves you or uses you, whether you're cherished children or expendable tools, whether your service is meaningful in cosmic sense or just mechanical function, none of that changes what you do. You guard because you are guardian. You serve because you were made to serve. You stand vigil because the vigil needs standing and you're capable of standing it. The meaning comes from the act itself, not from external validation or reward or acknowledgement. You are Custodian Guard, one of the Emperor's 10,000, and that is enough. Not because it's fulfilling in ways mortals would understand, not because it brings happiness or satisfaction or any emotional reward, but because it's true. It's what you are, definitionally and completely. You can no more stop being custodian than you can stop being human at the biological level. It's woven into every cell of your reconstructed body, embedded in every neural pathway of your enhanced mind, the core truth around which your entire existence is organized. The Golden Throne's machinery hums with the power of a dying star, its systems straining to maintain their burden for one more day, one more century, one more millennium. The 1,000 psychers are consumed daily, their souls fed to the Emperor to sustain his existence and the Astronomican's light. The price of the Imperium's survival is measured in lives, always has been, always will be. You are part of that price, your existence another offering on the altar of necessity, your centuries of service payment for the crime of humanity's survival in a universe that wants it dead. And standing there, in the presence of the dying God you were made to protect, you feel something that might be called contentment if custodians experienced such emotions. Not happiness, not fulfillment, but the deep satisfaction of purpose being served, of duty being executed with the excellence that defines your existence. You are exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you were made for, being exactly what the galaxy needs, even if it doesn't know to thank you for it. The vigil continues. Will continue for as long as custodians exist and the Emperor endures. 10,000 years have not diminished it. 10,000 more will not break it. You will stand guard, and when you eventually fall, another will take your place, and the line will hold, because that's what Custodian Guard means. Eternal, unchanging, perfect, alone. You turn from the Golden Throne, your watch rotation complete, another custodian arriving to take your position with wordless precision. You walk through the palace corridors, past mortals who don't see you, through history that doesn't notice you, toward your next assignment, or your quarters, or just continuing existence. Your armor gleams gold in the Luminator light, oromite crafted with techniques that cannot be replicated, bearing your personal heraldry and centuries of service studs. You are magnificent, you are terrible, you are necessary, you are Custodian Guard, born to perfection, made to serve, destined to stand vigil until the stars burn out, or the Emperor rises, or the universe ends. You are the Emperor's finest creation, his ultimate guardians, his final gift to a humanity that may not deserve you but desperately needs you. And you are completely, utterly, devastatingly alone in your excellence, separated from all others by the very perfection that makes you valuable. This is your existence. This is your purpose. This is what it means to be one of the 10,000. The palace stretches away in all directions, infinite corridors requiring infinite guards, and you walk them knowing you will never stop walking them, that this is your eternity, that you were made for this and nothing else. The loneliness is total. The isolation is absolute. The duty is eternal. And somewhere, in the parts of your mind that still remember being almost human, you whisper a thought that will never be spoken aloud. This is glorious. This is terrible. This is everything. This is nothing. I am custodian. I am guard to dying God in failing empire, and my existence matters, because I choose to believe it matters, because meaning found in service is still meaning, because purpose is what you make it even when you were made for purpose. In the Emperor's name, I stand vigil, not because he loves me, not because he notices me, but because the vigil needs standing, and I am capable of standing it, and that has to be enough because nothing else is offered, and nothing else would serve. I am one of 10,000. I am perfect. I am alone. I am eternal, and I am exactly what the galaxy needs me to be. The thought fades, disciplined, back beneath layers of conditioning and duty, but it was there, real and true, the closest thing to revelation that custodians allow themselves. You resume your duties, your face hidden behind the impassive glory of your armor, your thoughts known only to yourself, your existence continuing in eternal service to Emperor and Imperium. This is what it means to be Custodian Guard. This is the price of perfection. This is the weight of being humanity's ultimate guardian. Glorious, terrible, necessary, alone, forever.